Welcome to Cover Book Beat. I'm your host, Roger Nichols. Our guest today has been an internationally award-winning, recognized digital health specialist of 3 decades. She earned a PhD in public health and policy from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, a master's in health science, international health from Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. And she has written more than 100 publications in various aspects of public health and technology in scientific and health journals, with more than 30 years of work in 45 countries around the world. And now she's written her first novel, Antidotes, The Pollution Solution, a middle school book starring a group of fifth graders who successfully challenge polluters. Very pleased to welcome Dr. Patricia Mechael.
Thanks, Roger. I'm really happy to be here.
I understand you had a close-at-hand middle school expert as a collaborator for this book?
I did. My now 11-year-old son, we started the book when he was 7 years old. And I, was watching what was happening with the COVID-19 pandemic. This was in March of 2020. And I started joking with him that we wouldn't be in such a hot mess if kids were in charge. And he glommed onto that and got really excited about what things would have looked like if kids were in charge.
And obviously that's informed this. The protagonist, Gear, has a mom who's a health professor. So how closely are the characters to those in your family?
So Gear is a composite character, as well as Izzy. I probably relate more to Izzy than I do to Gear. Mm-hmm. And they all have elements of different people. The mom is more shaped around me. Mm-hmm. And other characters have sort of borrowed bits and pieces of people that we know.
Yeah. Though Gear is the nominal protagonist, the book is told through first-person accounts from all him and his school friends. How much of a challenge was it to find the individual voices of the characters?
With the Antidotes pollution solution, it took me a little while to find their authentic voices and to really distinguish each of the characters with their own, identities and personalities. I was really fortunate. I ended up studying middle grade fiction craft with a well-known middle grade fiction writer, Kayla Carter, who really helped, she sort of my spirit guide through the creative writing process. And throughout the process, there were moments where she was like, dial back the science, bring out the characters, bring out the story. And it really forced me to think about them and almost like birth them in some ways. They've sort of become like my children in many ways.
Well, I also noticed, just from a technical standpoint, as the action speeds up toward the end of the book, the chapters get shorter, and I can really see this being edited into a nice little movie.
Absolutely. I think it lends itself well to the screen. I write as if I'm seeing things visually play out. And so, I would be really thrilled if the Antidotes pollution solution ended up on a screen someday. Yeah.
Okay, who's going to play you? Have you already mapped that out?
Marianne Cotillard is probably one of my favorite actresses out there. I also recently saw a thing with Kate Winslet. She did a fantastic job in the film Contagion. I don't know if you if you remember that movie. And then she recently did a film with, I believe, her daughter on technology. And actually the second book in the series is visiting a lot of those issues.
Okay. I also note that the bad guy company is named Thermopylae, which is a clever homonym from Monopoly. I was really tickled by that.
That was like not the intention. It was really funny. I mean, in my family, we are huge Monopoly people. You do not want to compete in Monopoly with anybody in the Mechael family. But it came out of, I was sort of like, what can I combine that sort of talks a little bit about plastics and does not exactly exist as a company out there, to really make sure that I was not stepping on anybody's toes.
Well, and it works out thermo as which is one kind of plastic, which is heat setting, and poly from multiple. It's actually a pretty clever name, so you might want to copyright that before somebody does.
Sure.
I have to talk a bit about the relationships in this book, because that is a really powerful part of the storytelling, and particularly with Izzy and her late grandmother.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that was, when I was writing the Antidotes pollution solution, the Izzy character came out of a writing workshop. And I wanted a culture that was different from like Gear and his mother's culture to sort of illustrate the diversity in the sciences. But then I also wanted to bring in the arts aspect. And so out of that sort of came Izzy and her grandmother, who was, a famous actress in Japan, and some of the more artistic aspects of bringing art alongside the sciences to communicate about, the issues.
And one thing you make good use of, or at least their characters do, is the internet, which did not exist in our day, or my day at least. Yeah.
Absolutely. And these young people have so much access to information. It is incredible. And they're learning so much through the internet, and which I think is really exciting. I think it's an incredible tool for exposing young people to whether it's visual, images or video, as well as, just content from, all over the world on, every issue or topic that you could imagine.
And some you'd rather not have seen or imagined, but that's a whole nother story there.
Well, and that is what we're going to work on in book 2. And that is, we have to have this balanced approach to technology and young people.
All right. One of the things that we probably should just do the basic plot. I'll let you describe it because I don't want to give away too much, but so people could be more interested in going find this marvelous book.
Sure. So the basic plot is, there is a stink in the Chesapeake Bay, and it is coming from a plastic eating bacteria experiment that has gone wrong. That thermopoly deploys because they're trying to cover up their plastic pollution. And so the young people in the book, Gear and Izzy, take turns narrating the book. They've just come out of a pandemic. And so the last thing they want to do is find themselves in a similar situation where they are no longer able to go to school. And so they see this threat kind of coming along that is making fish and kids sick, because the plastic eating bacteria, exposes them to this toxin, and they work together to form the antidotes to really try to understand the problem, as well as come up with the solution. And they have some, supportive grownups along the way that kind of help them through the process. But a lot of it is really driven by the young people themselves, because during the pandemic, I think it was really fascinating to see how much children and young people became the most affected by the pandemic, and yet they were the least engaged or involved in the solutions to the pandemic. And to me, as a public health specialist, and as a parent, I feel like we missed an opportunity to engage them as part of the solution.
That's excellent. And I also want to note that you have strong female characters, which is not always the case with middle grade books.
Absolutely. And not always the case with having more women and girls in the sciences in the media. There's just this huge gap in having really good illustrations of what females engaged in science and technology look like, behave like, and accomplish and do. And so that was really important for me. It was important for me to show what that could be and what that looks like. And then also some of the common challenges that male and female scientists encounter. And there is, in the book, I won't give it away, but there is some friction that comes about between Gear and Izzy, and they have to each individually work their way through it, but then also work together to acknowledge that diversity and more minds working together on the same team can get you better results.
In fact, one of the things that's really interesting is how all of the skill sets of everyone involved interlock to make a much more powerful statement or result.
Absolutely. I mean, it does, like in the Antidotes pollution solution, there is a very strong focus on team and diversity. All the characters are incredibly diverse and come at the same issue from very different cultures and perspectives. And I think that's really exciting. And that's one of the things that I love about the scientific process is what happens when you get a group of, caring and smart and yet very different people together to work to understand a problem and then to come up with a solution to the problem.
And again, speaking of the diversity, you mentioned Japan, but also you've got people with Egyptian heritage in here and other places. And it's just, the thing I like about it is just not made a big deal of, it's just there. And that's the way it should be for all of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we're all multiple things, right? We all come into the world with our very unique identities and perspectives, whether it's cultural or linguistic or, our passions, the things that we're interested in and excited about and drawn to. And I think all of those things, play an important role for each of us to have sort of an individual identity. But one of the things I also wanted to do in the Antidotes was also illustrate and show collective action that yes, we are all individuals and we all have our own individual paths and journeys and the things that we aspire to or struggle with, but those things should not be at the expense of others. And there's a real powerful way that they can come together for the common good. And that was another sort of major theme that kind of came out of the pandemic, where there was, I think in many ways the grownups got in their own way and prioritized like self and the individual and individual rights over, public health and how, my decisions not only impact me and those that are close to me, but they also impact others. And I think, that was something else that I really wanted to bring, particularly with young people, because I feel like we have an opportunity to bring public health back into society with young people. I feel like with older adults, it's harder. I think people are quite fixed in their perspectives and aren't necessarily willing to have the conversations with each other that we need to have when we're looking at, issues that impact everyone.
As a public health expert, let me get you online about what might be done or planning that we might do, because there will be another pandemic sometime down the road. May not be for another 100 years, but what should we be doing now to prepare for that?
Sure. I think we need to bring public health back in the United States. I mean, I think in America was, one of the founders of the field of public health. We were the first country to have, the Centers for Disease Control to, tackle malaria. We were one of the first countries to eradicate polio. And we have a lot to be proud of as a country that invested very heavily in public health and public health infrastructure. We just haven't been doing it over the last 20 years, and our public health infrastructure is broken. And in our leadership role globally in public health post-pandemic is broken. I mean, people used to come to us as the model for what public health looks like. And my recommendation is to bring that back, is to get young people to care about, public health and care about basics like clean water and working together to solve common problems and challenges, but also work with policymakers to invest in the infrastructure that's needed to, sustain the gains that we've made from a public health perspective, but then also, shore us up so that we are protected against the next pandemic.
Right. Absolutely. I think that maybe it has been more effective on local levels in various spots. We're very lucky in our county. We had a tri-county public health, and every 2 weeks when the Wasco County Commissioners would meet, the doctor that was the representative for them would do an update, and was massively followed on Zoom by hundreds of people. So it was very, very helpful to have that.
Absolutely. I mean, Washington, D.C., the same thing. We had like a very strong head of the Department of Public Health, and she, from a public health perspective, she followed the playbook, and was an amazing communicator. And so it was always very clear kind of where the numbers were, why we were doing what we were doing, and when we would go from, one thing as a community to the next thing as a community. And that gave me a lot of comfort to be here. I'm originally from New York, and I was, following, the battles between New York City and New York State over the guidance on the pandemic. And I was just like, guys, like we don't have time to do this.
Yeah, let's stop existing only in our own silos and look a little bit beyond that. I also want to get back to, I wandered away from the book a little bit, but I thought it would be interesting to your perspective on that as well. I also want to compliment you on very tasteful insertions of pop culture in it. You've got Muppets references. You have a number of things, and I have to. There's a chapter titled "Izzy Pop," and I immediately thought of Iggy Pop, which the younger generation will never go, but I really appreciated that. That was a nice touch.
Absolutely. And I mean, and it is for, the book is for young people ages 8 and up. And by young people, I mean all of us. Mm-hmm. I feel like there's a lot that grownups can learn from reading it, just about basic public health and how things work, as well as collaboration in the sciences and those sorts of issues.
This feels like it might be the beginning of a series. Do you have others in mind?
I do. And we're very actively working on book 2, which is the working title is Masters of Technology. And the characters continue on. They are now in the 6th grade. They are getting their first mobile phones. They are having to navigate a very thorny and thwarted technology environment, and one of the young people creates an algorithm that starts exposing the secret search history of their friends to each other.
Oh my goodness.
And so they have to find ways to think critically about technology and master the technology and become effective users of technology.
Great. I always like to ask authors who are starting or involved with a series, if you have a number in mind. Is this a trilogy, or is it as far as we can take it? And if so, do you have an endpoint for it?
I have about 5 of these that I have in mind of different public health issues. So the themes will always be around public health. I see, social media and technology as a critical public health issue. I've spent, 25 years working on how do we harness technology to improve public health. And now I'm sort of like, okay, how do we, work with technology to mitigate some of the harms that it may be creating from a public health perspective.
Yes.
Some of the other, public health issues that I am interested in tackling for young people are mental health is, increasingly becoming not just mental health that's associated with technology, but mental health in general. I think our young people are increasingly struggling with issues of depression and anxiety in ways that that maybe went undocumented for a long time, or maybe we didn't struggle with them as much as they are currently struggling with them. Nutrition is another big area in the public health space that is impacting young people. I haven't quite figured out how to deal with the nutrition issue. I kind of, it's sort of in there because you don't want to it's not about shaming or I feel like the approach to nutrition has been really thorny and there's a lot of sensitivity around it. And I feel like there's got to be some creative way to do it without doing it,
I hear you. I hear you indeed. Want to mention all the places where we can connect with you. I believe there are some social media aspects to it.
Absolutely. So I am on Instagram at the Antidotes series and on LinkedIn as Patricia Mechael. I also have a website, www.patricia, and my last name is spelled Mechael. And on the website, you can sign up for my monthly newsletter. I don't spam people. I send out one newsletter each month on some aspect of public health and young people, technology, STEM and girls, the environment, or, issues that are happening of social concern, et cetera. And so, just encourage you to, look me up, join the Antidotes community, and buy the book. It's available on Amazon and on IndieBound through local bookstores.
All right. Very, very well done. Nice summation. Our guest today has been Dr. Patricia Mechael. The book is Antidotes, the Pollution Solution. Very highly recommended. And thanks so much for spending time with us today.
No, thank you for having me, Roger. This was a lot of fun.